What if I told you that Davante Adams was recently spotted with the Saints coach who he has known since his Fresno State days when he was playing with quarterback Derek Carr? There is a real possibility that Davante Adams could reunite with Derek Carr on the New Orleans Saints this year. It does not have to be the New York Jets. Most people forget that Davante Adams had a career year with Derek Carr and the Raiders in 2022. It was the second most receiving touchdowns and second most receiving yards in a single season in Davante Adams' 10-year career. Yes, we know they lost games, but they were dealing with the drama of head coach Josh McDaniels, and a lot of those games they lost were one-score games. This easily could have been a playoff team. Most of you know that Davante Adams left the Packers in 2022 to play with Derek Carr. Their relationship goes back over 10 years when they played together at Fresno State.
DC throwing all the touchdowns. Corners can't guard me, so what you do now? This is the last few bars. Fresno State Bulldogs, yeah, we go hard.
And since the whole fallout with Derek Carr and the Raiders happened, where Josh McDaniels released him and got nothing for him after the 2022 season, well, Davante Adams has been able to reflect on that recently in podcast interviews.
You know, Derek was, you know, at one point in the league, you know, he was a MVP candidate. Like, you can't say anything, you know, you cannot like Derek personally, but you got to respect what he's done, and that he solidified, you know, my decision to come here.
At the same time, I don't know if I would have made the move had it not been him, you know, under center when I got there. And then I talked about, obviously, when they got rid of him, I was not happy about that at all.
Davante Adams was upset when they moved on from one of his best friends at the quarterback position, and since then, Derek Carr has been vindicated. The Raiders have gone downhill at the quarterback position since Carr left. Davante Adams has played with 5 different quarterbacks like Jarrett Stidham, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell, and now in 2024, Gardner Minshew. The rest of the NFL world sees the writing on the wall.
I thought Davante Adams would get traded this offseason, really. Like we just discussed, we know where the Raiders are. It's not Super Bowl time right now.
At this point, Davante Adams will inevitably be traded away from the Raiders. It just depends on when. Is it going to be now or right before the trade deadline? For a while, Raiders fans had not accepted this, but after the disastrous quarterback performance against the Dallas Cowboys backups in the Week 2 preseason game, many are recognizing that this is a reality. Obviously, Davante Adams would prefer a better quarterback situation, and there's no way you can convince any NFL fan that Davante Adams is super stoked to catch passes from Gardner Minshew this year. But who knows? Maybe the Raiders could be initiating this type of trade. They're smart enough to know they're not competing for a Super Bowl this year, unfortunately, and they ought to stack assets to get their quarterback of the future next year in the 2025 NFL Draft. In this past offseason, most pundits made a big deal about Aaron Rodgers teasing a trade to grab Davante Adams and have him join the New York Jets. The two pros were golfing at the famous Lake Tahoe golfing event.
Do you think Luke Getsy's going to utilize Davante Adams good in the new Raiders offense?
I love Luke Getsy. He's a fantastic coach.
Awesome.
And I love Davante. I can't wait to play with him again.
But ever since those viral moments, Aaron Rodgers has downplayed the Davante Adams to Jets rumors, and he's basically admitting that he was joking around. What a lot of people neglected around this same time is the fact that Davante Adams at Lake Tahoe was also hanging out with quarterback Derek Carr of the New Orleans Saints. These two guys are still super close, and if Aaron Rodgers was trying to convince Davante Adams to leave the Raiders, you best believe Derek Carr was doing the exact same thing. The NFL media also tries to make it seem like Derek Carr's situation with the New Orleans Saints is not stable, even though they recently restructured Derek Carr's contract, basically making his contract fully guaranteed for this year and next year. The quarterback is locked into the Saints until 2026. We know last year in the 2023 season, the Saints offense struggled out of the gate. But what we learned this past week while the Saints played the 49ers in preseason was that Derek Carr was number 1 in multiple categories over the past 4 games. The Saints offense dramatically improved towards the end of the year, and they matched the Buccaneers record in the NFC South and were literally a half a game away from making the playoffs. Right now, the Saints have superstar wide receiver Chris Olave still on his rookie contract, and they recently extended the speedy wide receiver Rashid Shaheed, locking in both players at a bargain rate for this year and next year. One of the biggest problems with the Saints offense right now is the fact that they don't have a true number 3 receiving threat outside of those 2 smaller speedy wide receivers. The Saints moved on from wide receiver Michael Thomas this past offseason after he was somewhat of a locker room cancer, tweeting out critiques of the head coach Dennis Allen and quarterback Derek Carr. So clearly right now there is a need for a more traditional, bigger body wide receiver that can complement the other 2. The Saints have been trying to work with knockoff brothers of other famous wide receivers. No, they did not grab the famous Puka Nacua, instead they have his brother, Samson Nacua. No, they did not grab Amon-Ra St. Brown, instead they got the brother, Equanimous St. Brown. But unfortunately, none of these other wide receivers on the team outside of the top 2 have really stepped up. This past offseason, the Saints did revamp their offense by signing a new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. But a lot of people ignored another low-key signing, which was the addition of Keith Williams as their wide receiver coach. Keith Williams, like we mentioned at the top of the video, was the receiving coach at Fresno State and actually recruited Davante Adams in 2010 and served on the Fresno State coaching staff while Derek Carr and Davante Adams put up historic numbers. So this wide receiver coach, who is on the Saints right now, has literally known Carr and Adams for 14 years. And nobody reported this, nobody talked about this, which is the fact that on Instagram in late July, Davante Adams was working out with Keith Williams. The coach and the wide receiver both shared this Instagram story. This just shows how strong their connection is to this day. Despite the fact that the receiver and the coach are on different teams, he still remains his personal wide receiver coach. So fast forward to right now in late August of 2024, I truly believe the Saints roster is built to win right now in the very vulnerable NFC South. Taysom Hill, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore, and Tyrann Mathieu are all on their final prime years, and they need to win now. The Saints defense has gotten even better by adding pass rusher Chase Young, and he looks like he is back to being the prime player he was when he was selected in the first round by the Washington Commanders. The offensive line is the biggest issue with the Saints team, but you saw this unit improve against the 49ers in preseason. First round pick offensive tackle Fuaga looks like the real deal, and Trevor Penning was able to hold his own against the San Francisco 49ers. The run game looked amazing despite the fact that it was non-existent last year, and you saw against the San Francisco 49ers, Taysom Hill looked awesome at running back. The balanced attack with play action should buy Derek Carr more time in the pocket rather than last year relying on him to drop back and throw every single play, and you saw that on display in this past game. The Saints put together a solid drive against the Niners. Right now, to really compete, all the Saints need to do is make a big acquisition on offense to compete against all the moves the Atlanta Falcons have been making recently. The Falcons, led by Kirk Cousins for now, unless Michael Penix Jr. takes his job, well, they've been making some big free agent acquisitions, and they are the favorite to win the NFC South. They recently grabbed Matthew Judon, the pass rusher, via trade. They also grabbed a safety, Justin Simmons, who actually had wined and dined with the Saints and then chose to join the Atlanta Falcons instead. But I really do feel like the Falcons are being overhyped. As far as weapons, yes, they have Drake London and they have Kyle Pitts, and they're going to hope that the former Chicago Bear Darnell Mooney is going to be a solid free agent acquisition, but this could easily go south. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are also a threat in the NFC South, but they really did not make many big upgrades on their team this year, and they pretty much kept the exact same roster as last year. And like we mentioned earlier, when it came down to it, when the Saints got in their groove, they matched their record in the division and arguably should have won the NFC South. So in order to capitalize on the prime years of some of these veteran players on the Saints, in order to really boost morale for this team, I think the Part 2 reunion of Davante Adams and Derek Carr, who are both in their 30s, could help this team compete and go all the way. If the Raiders are truly going to move on from Davante Adams, who has no more guarantees on his contract after this season, I think the Saints need to send as many draft picks as possible to make this happen, because if they don't, then this veteran roster that they're completely locked into is all just a waste for nothing. The Saints are too invested. They could not rebuild right now, even if they wanted to. So I truly believe their time is now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, Wi-Fi Willie, for more content from me. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.